Now, do you want to break the news still?
Oh, yeah, guys, there's been a lot of, I'm doing Louder with Crowder.
I love Crowder.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're on there?
Hold on,
Like every
take
week
it,
you're
bro.
flying out there?
Yeah, I fly out there. And, it takes a lot of time out of my day.
Sure.
I got family.
You gonna fly to Dallas?
I got a lot of stuff.
You have to.
And so I just wanted to say that today,
Be honest.
Yes, we did, cause we back at it again. It's the fighter and the kid. It's the fighter and the kid.
This is really the fighter and the kid.
come on, baby. Our guest, Layne Norton, my friend, I've known you now 10 years, maybe more. First thing you ever did was he came on my podcast a long time ago. And he's like, well, I'm the guy who calls bullshit on all your fast solutions when it comes to nutrition.
Also known as Bro Science?
All the Bro Science. And what I love about Layne, now that he's got this massive following and crushing it with his app and all that, is that you did it the right way. You did it without any gimmicks, without any promises, without any bullshit, and put your body to the test. World record holder,
And
ladies
you're
and gentlemen.
giving
Former
Bryan
world record
10%.
holder.
Former world record holder.
Yeah.
But you won the world championships.
I won IPF Masters Worlds in powerlifting.
And you pulled how much?
So my deadlift there was 677.
Natural.
My former world record was in 2015 in the open, which was a squat, which was 668.
And you weighed how much at the time?
I was in the 205-pound weight class, but I weighed in that day actually at 201.5.
Oh, wow.
Pretty light.
And you squatted 698 pounds?
668.
668.
Yeah.
668 too.
It's a lot of weight.
Now, do you want to break the news still?
Oh,
hate
yeah,
that.
guys, there's been a lot of,
Uh-oh.
I know.
I'm doing Louder with Crowder.
I love Crowder.
Yeah.
I just talked to Crowder.
Yeah, great guy.
He's my guy.
I'm doing Crowder. I'm on Louder with Crowder.
What do you
There's
mean
been a
you're
lot of
on there?
speculation.
What do you mean you're on there?
Hold on,
Like every
take
week
it,
you're
bro.
flying out there?
Yeah, I fly out there. And, it takes a lot of time out of my day.
Sure.
I got family.
You gonna fly to Dallas?
I got a lot of stuff.
You have to.
And so I just wanted to say that today
Be honest.
is not my last day. And I'm not leaving Fighter and the Kid.
Yeah.
Nor have I ever, in my mind, thought about leaving Fighter and the Kid.
How stupid are people?
Okay? So I'm staying until this fucking show
Until the wheels
spirals,
fall off,
until
yeah.
the wheels fall off and this show just turns into like when you see the show and it's just dust and flies,
Yeah.
some flies flying around, when the cameras are on and you just hear a dog howling and sagebrush.
Well, I think that's
when I'll be
you
gone.
die of old age.
When I'm a skeleton,
If one of us passes away, that's when the show shuts
yeah,
down.
I'm gonna be mummified. Just put me in here like this.
Long time. What was it, like 25, 30?
Was that?
Like 25, 30? I mean, you got at least 50 years.
I got, yeah, well, I don't know about
50,
that. I'm an
come
old
on,
man.
dude. I mean,
It's
I'll
amazing.
probably go
people
before
make
him.
these videos about me leaving, and they catch fire, and I get people calling me. Everybody's calling me, going, "Hey, man!" People like, "You're leaving Fighter and
you
Kid. What's
think
going
people
on?"
would learn all that like TMZ bullshit?
I don't- but I don't- I don't
like
pay
that
attention.
low-level TMZ, like the internet culture. Like how much bullshit is out there?
I gotta get
You think
more
regular
involved in it,
fans.
though. I gotta get more-
You
I
think
don't-
regular fans be like, oh, this is bullshit? You don't think we would announce it first?
I said to my wife, I said, I gotta be a little bit more savvy on what the internet's saying. My wife goes, "You're 56. You raised the children.
Yeah,
and
with
shut
you.
up."
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the last thing you need.
I cannot get involved in anything.
I was waiting here. You're 56. Do you even know what the internet is?
Yeah, I mean, it would be pathetic for me to get involved with all the minutia.
Yeah, so
I have
Brian's
enough
not
trouble.
leaving though.
Yeah, I'm just raising my children.
Dumbasses.
Now,
back to you.
Wait, hold on.
The internet's changed your life.
My favorite
we,
topic.
we split everything 50-50. The internet gave me a little look. People love me.
Yeah. What'd the internet do?
The people have spoken. They want me to get 75% of all the. This is awkward, and I hate doing this.
I hate
it.
'Cause here's what's weird.
Crowder's calling.
My beak's dry too.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean your
My
beak?
beak's dry.
What do you mean,
I
dude?
do a lot of work.
Hey,
My beak's
bro.
Dry.
Come on, keep at it. Keep at it. Keep pushing the fucking grain mill. Back to Layne. Layne, I love that you. My favorite thing about what you do now, I've told you this, is that you debunk all the bro science out there. You when somebody comes out and says vegan is the way to go, carnivore is the way to go, this, that, and the other.
But is that bro science? Like to me, that bro science would be something like we were speaking out there in the lobby of Thicccboy Studio is like Diet Coke could give you cancer. Like that's a thing that's just gone.
And I've ingested that, so I don't drink Diet Coke because I was like, I don't want cancer. But
you're cuck.
Me and Rogan were talking about.
I mean, I see that stuff. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Even if it does, I'm gonna keep.
You don't give a fuck.
Like my dad was like, I don't drink Diet Cokes anymore, man. You know, your uncle from artificial sweetener. He probably passed away. He got throat cancer from it, and I was like, where are you reading this, Dad? But if you want, you can find that online. Whatever narrative, there's confirmation bias for whatever bro science is out there.
Well, you're not afraid. You're not afraid of substances.
No. Actually, I did a whole panel. I did a whole panel yesterday, blood work panel, yeah.
You're better now.
I mean, what do you mean?
Well, you take 5 nicotine patches at a time. And
yeah, the nicotine's not bothering me too much.
Okay.
And that's another bro science thing is Huberman, which Huberman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Huberman, who's great.
Andrew today.
Yeah, he's the best. He doesn't live far from here, but he went on Two Bears, One Cave, Segura and Bert Kreischer's podcast, talking about the benefits of nicotine. I know that for a hot second, but no one's going to listen to my dumb ass.
You actually know a lot about nutrition, I feel.
Well, yeah, just all the years.
You actually do.
I looked into that, but with the nicotine, I've been saying that. But even the company that I work with, like, hey, don't say these benefits. Like, we can't. Yeah. It's not good for us when you do that.
Yeah, I mean, like, nicotine's not something I've looked super far into. It is, like, it can be addictive, but it does have
100%.
distinct nootropic benefits, cognitive benefits. And actually, I have one of my good friends. He uses nicotine pouches because he's really sensitive to caffeine. It tears up his GI. And he said he found that just like taking like little 2 milligram pouches of nicotine throughout the day, that helps keep him like fresh and
a lot of
focused.
great books have been written on cigarettes. A lot of great books.
Yeah.
And
But thank God for people like you, Andrew. There's a lot of people out there now.
Now, I want to be clear real quick. Cigarettes, smoking, any form, like even vaping, that sort of thing, if you smoke it, that appears to be what causes the damage to the arteries, and the blood vessels, and that sort of thing. It doesn't appear to be the nicotine, and people will say, well, what about a water vape? What about this?
No.
It's probably, again, not my area, but it's probably a little bit better than smoking it normally, but it's still not good, you know?
Yeah, it's how you get the delivery of the nicotine
Correct.
is what makes it better than others.
Right.
Anyone smoking a cigarette now, like, are you shitting me? You know, it's like, you're a dumbass.
Yeah. I told you, a famous director, he goes, you have so much energy, man. How do you have so much energy? He's like, I don't get it. And I go, well, I just watch what I eat. I mean, are you asking me? He goes, yeah. I mean, how do you tell me something? I go, you can't smoke. And he goes like, I swear to God, he goes, oh, no. Fuck. He was dead serious.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking earlier, you know, every time I've gotten my testosterone done and we were talking about me competing, I compete exclusively drug tested, which I'm sure everybody out there is like, oh, here we go, you know, but, you know, every time I've got my testosterone level measured since I was like probably 25 or 28, it's like anywhere between 800 and 1100.
Which is insane.
Very high. But my free test is normal, and then my luteinizing hormone is normal. But, you know, people will ask me all the time, because I'm 41 now, they'll be like, so are you on TRT? Or they just assume I'm on TRT or whatever. And I'm like, why would I do TRT? I literally don't need it.
Yeah.
You know, like
the levels you have is what people would take
you've been
TRT
trying to get
for.
to.
Exactly. Yeah, 1100's high.
Like, but I tell people, I'm like, listen, I'm not somebody who's, Brian, and you've been around me a lot. I will give credit where credit's due, or I'll say when there's a valid point to something. Like for people who have low levels of testosterone, if they're already like, I tell people like, I never beat my body up with drugs and alcohol when I was younger. I didn't party a lot. You know, I slept enough. I managed my stress. I ate well. You know, but if you're doing those things and your testosterone's low and you're having things like low sex drive, poor performance, poor energy, then absolutely but don't go to these like roadside, like go to an actual endocrinologist who knows what they're doing.
And get your blood work done.
And get your blood work done. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, this is kind of a little bit of a tangential thing, but I'll have a lot of people say things like, well, my hormones are out of whack. I'm like, really? So what are your levels? Well, I didn't measure them. I'm like, so how do you know that they're out of whack? Oh, wait, you drink a whole bottle of wine every night and you don't sleep more than 5 hours and you're wondering why you have low energy, but it's your hormones.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people out there that actually don't want to get stuff measured because they got it measured and found out it was normal. Now they don't really have a scapegoat to blame on stuff.
They'd have to quit drinking and not sleeping and all that.
Exactly.
You are, I was talking to Rogan about how I get my information from you, Andy Galpin, guys like that. I listen to Andrew Huberman. When we call you the jacked scientist, because you have your PhD, and I will go with a guy who has put his body to the test and competed.
Who walks the walk?
How long have you been competing in powerlifting?
So I actually got into bodybuilding first, and I did my first show when I was 19, so 2001. And then I did bodybuilding until 2010. And then I actually got into powerlifting as just something in the off season from bodybuilding. Because again, I was competing drug free. It takes a long time to build muscle drug free. So I would take if you're trying to stay lean, you're just not going to build that much muscle. So I would take 2-3 years off between series of shows that I would do to try and grow. And I always tell people when they'll accuse me of drugs, I'm like, well, from the time I turned pro in natural bodybuilding to the time I competed as a pro was 4 years, and I added 2.5 pounds of stage weight. Nothing screams, man, if I'm on drugs, those would be the worst steroid drugs. Yeah, exactly.
Let me know what you're taking so I don't take it.
Please give me a refund.
You talk about this, how hard it is to put weight on, even for a guy like you. Right?
100%.
Yeah, the amount of
years.
My favorite is Due Date. Remember that movie? Todd Phillips said, I want you to gain, you got to put muscle on. I go to my trainer, I go, I got to put 30 pounds of muscle on. I got to get jacked. I didn't know how it worked. And he looked at me, he goes, how long do you have? He's already laughing. I go, 3 months, and he goes,
10 pounds a month.
He goes,
10 pounds.
He goes, so how do you want to do that? I go, I don't know. I'll lift heavy and eat a lot. Just give me a diet. He goes, you are a coat hanger. That's not how it works. He goes, I'd have to change your endocrine system. And even then you need
you'd be
year and a half.
juicy to the gills.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Brendan, let's take a break. You're going to be in Tacoma this weekend.
I'm in Tacoma, buddy.
Club.
Yep. Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
What if you get in an accident? What if you get hurt?
Oh, nothing worse. I mean, what if I need a lawyer?
Well, you can go to Morgan & Morgan because it's completely free, and in less than 8 clicks from your couch, you can file a claim. That's the first thing. They've got over 100 offices, 900 lawyers, or something crazy like that. Look, fact of the matter is accidents happen, and sometimes it can take you out of work and all kinds of things, but Morgan & Morgan can make you whole.
But do I need a ton of money to hire a lawyer?
It's free.
Unless you win?
Unless you win. That's how it is, okay?
If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 800 lawyers with over $15 billion recovered for its clients. Billion. We got you, man. Submit an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is so easy. It's like using an app more than hiring a lawyer. In fact, it's so easy. It's more like ordering takeout than hiring a lawyer. All right?
How about that?
So if you're ever injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win.
For more information, go to forthepeople.com/fighter or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. That's forthepeople.com/fighter or pound law, pound 529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement. Man, I need something to make my brain less foggy.
Well, after hearing Layne talk, right? You want to get your life on track?
I want good nutrition, dude.
You want the best, the only supplement company we trust?
Yeah.
You're talking about Onnit, dude.
Onnit.
And you know this. Don't act all surprised.
Alpha Brain Instant, Alpha Brain Black Label, Alpha Brain Focus Shot. They got Alpha Brain, the original. They've sold over 1 million bottles. The founders take it every day.
You're talking about the best nootropics on planet Earth. They've sold over 1 million bottles. As Bryan said, no return necessary. You get your money back if you don't feel the difference. Also, they have protein powder, creatine. Layne talked about how important creatine is. They have whey protein. They have MCT oil, fat butters. They got fitness gear. There's no reason not to get your thick ass in shape. They have on-demand workouts, kettlebells, club maces, home fitness streaming programs. They got it all. Go to onnit.com/FATK and you can save 10% off everything we just listed. There's no reason not to be in shape. At least start your journey of athletics. All right? Maybe get to the NBA. Onnit.com/FATK, 10% off everything. Tacoma, see you this weekend.
Yeah, that'd be tough. So I got into powerlifting just as a way to compete in something to keep myself engaged because I would get so bored in the off season from bodybuilding, just doing the same thing over and over. It turns out I was actually better at that than I was at bodybuilding. So yeah, I started competing in small local things, and then I actually got an email. I did one meet with an organization called the USAPL, and their parent organization, the IPF, is basically like the UFC of powerlifting, right?
It's
like
the
they're the
big
biggest
leagues,
organization. Because for a while MMA was like an alphabet soup,
For sure.
So the IPF is the biggest one, and I put in a total, and the head US coach actually messaged me. So that was an interesting. So that was I was 4 weeks out from Worlds, and I was super fatigued, and I've been dealing with some injuries, and I like
set a 5
failed.
for 2.
So I failed this last set here, like 4 weeks out. This is 100 pounds less than I'm supposed to squat on meet day, and I failed it. And you could see, like, I'm sure, Brendan, like getting ready for fights, like there'd be times where, like, how the fuck am I going to do
I'm
this?
screwed. Yeah.
You're so fatigued.
I can't do this now.
Yeah, you're so fatigued. And then if you swipe over, you can see, like, a month later,
it's all in one.
this is the
Watch
world
this.
record squat.
World record or bronze.
If you break the world record, you'd expect it.
Those announcers got a tough gig.
Yeah, exactly. How much weight is that?
That's 668, 303 kilos.
Jesus. You're
Well, it's doing
Oh, Andrew.
Oh, money.
He's got it.
is that the
Made the spotters hit depth.
Yeah, everybody got low. So in your business, I assume the biggest thing, like when you get hate, it's that you're on shit. Like you guys have to combat that all the time.
That used to be like back probably 5-6 years ago. That was definitely it. But now it's more so. I fuck with all the sacred cows. So like all the
Meaning?
dogma, like so.
It's my favorite.
Somebody comes out, says
calorie restriction?
don't eat plants because they have toxins, and I'm like,
Yeah,
here's why
they'd be
that's
right.
actually bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Or like the Game Changers comes out, and I do a big debunk of that, and I'm like, I just don't care what camp you're in. Like I'm not in any camp,
You're neutral. You just want what's best.
Yeah, which means everybody hates me. It's like the political person who's independent, so
Yeah.
both parties fucking hate him.
You gotta pick a side, so at least you
Exactly.
have that team.
But what I love is that you built this huge business the right way. And that's what I always saw that with you. You said, I'll never be successful. I'll never be. But now with like the Carbon app and all that stuff, you were like, I'll never have a yacht. I'll never have this stuff. And then like to see what
I always
you're
said
doing.
it, with my, like, just look at these guys who are, doctors, and it's like they're naturopaths or whatever. They're wearing a fucking lab coat. Like they actually have been in a lab before, They wouldn't know a
love
scientific
those.
study if it crawled up in their ass.
Those guys are great.
So
They
I'm
get
like,
me
what
too.
do I like need to wear a lab coat? Is that because I
That'd be
didn't
sick.
when I was in a lab, I didn't even wear a lab coat.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna put myself on blast. But like with my credentials and then the background and everything, if I really wanted to sell bullshit, I mean, I probably could have made a lot of money really quick. But the stuff I sell, which is, there's really no magic bullet. You got to be really consistent.
Hard work.
It takes a long time.
Nobody wants to hear that shit.
People are like, oh, that sounds rough. No, fuck that guy.
But there's longevity in with what you're doing. Those other people, it gets found out eventually. They
And
might
that's-
get a spike, but then people are like, dude,
And
this is
at the
working.
end of the day,
talk about like the like Gwyneth Paltrow's eating 800 calories.
Oh my
a day.
God.
People like
800?
Yeah, all these people like Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, but
they
they're all
starve
this way
Well, because
anyway.
you're gonna live longer
And
apparently.
they're also on, what is it? What is it?
Ozempic.
Ozempic.
So
They're
listen
on
to this.
Ozempic.
So how people say intermittent fasting and you should eat calorie restriction and all that, but like talk
You don't believe
about
in intermittent fasting? You're about to educate me today because real quick, just full transparency, carnivore and intermittent fasting
okay.
and TRT.
I mean, it certainly
Big dick.
can work. So, all right, which one do you want me to take first? Ozempic or?
Yeah, do Ozempic. Yeah, because I've
Okay.
looked into that.
So,
God,
all right, so Ozempic is basically a brand name for what's called semiglutide. Semiglutide is a GLP-1 mimetic. So GLP-1 is a hormone your gut secretes in response to you feeding. And it acts on the gut and the brain and tells you, basically you're full, right? Like stop eating.
And with to interrupt you real quick, sorry, but it was originally designed for diabetes, correct?
diabetic.
Well, it definitely improves diabetes, but it improves diabetes because people lose weight.
Oh, gotcha.
So what you'll find is like even, there's this myth out there that like you can't, if you have diabetes, you got to eat a low carb diet. There are numerous studies that have shown a low fat, high carb diet, if people lose weight, improves diabetes almost as much as a low carb diet. Probably not quite as much, but so this drug basically works because people eat less and they lose weight, which is great because, we spent a lot of time, probably the last 30 years, most people focused, like most researchers focused on how do we boost metabolism? How do we like increase energy expenditure. And really the results were very disappointing. But when they started focusing on appetite, that's when they found the biggest, people don't want to hear that because it's like, you could just reduce your intake yourself, right? But one thing I will say is if you look at research in obese people, they typically get a greater reward sensation from food. They also, they don't have like the same sensitivity to satiety signals. Say that 3 times fast. And also I thought what was interesting is obese people, and there was a study of obese women, and they found that obese women were 50% more likely to have sexual assault trauma in their past.
Yep.
So one of the things to keep in mind is that, people have looked at obesity as kind of like these people are lazy, they're choosing to be this way. Most people operate on autopilot. Like their habits and behaviors are on autopilot. It's not like somebody's eating a slice of pizza and they're like, I understand that this is 500 calories and I'm willing to make that exchange because I love pizza so much. No, they're just doing what they usually do.
It's their routine, yeah.
So GLP-1 is a very powerful appetite suppressant. And I think the average weight loss in the studies so far has been 15%, and people keep it off. Now, I'm not a fan of people who are like, I want to lose 5 or 10 pounds. I'm going to take semiglutide. That's just, come on, stop.
It's like putting a Band-Aid over the problem.
It's like using a howitzer to take out a fly. Like it's just overkill, you know? And I mean, listen, I'm not somebody who's like blowing the whistle like about like side effects. So far, I haven't really there's been some concerns about thyroid cancer. That so far has just been in rodents and in high doses. So,
and
but
muscle.
it's possible.
And doesn't it?
So I'll address that because I heard Andrew and Joe talking about it on the podcast yesterday.
They were haters on it.
So I think the study showed about a 32% loss of lean mass. Now, it's important to point out, lean mass is not the same thing as skeletal muscle. Okay, so lean mass includes all non-fat tissues, including your organs, your bones, basically everything that's not adipose is lean mass, right? And even adipose tissue, so the fat tissue itself, is 13% lean mass. It's 87% triglyceride, but in order to have the structure of the adipose to hold the triglyceride, you have to have some lean tissue there, okay? So when you diet and you lose weight, you can expect to lose at least 13% lean mass from the reduction in adipose tissue size. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
And then you also, your organs tend to shrink, your splanchnic tissues tend to shrink, your digestive tissues tend to shrink because you're eating less food. And you lose body water, and body water is also lean mass. So once you understand that, the 30%, it sounds kind of less scary.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
And if you look at just normal dieting studies of people who don't resistance train, that's about what you see anyway. So I don't think that semiglutide is causing people to lose more lean mass than they would lose from just regular dieting. What I would say, in anybody who's going to do a diet, is resistance train. I mean, that's going to help you retain a lot more muscle. If you can do a high protein diet, that's going to help you retain more muscle as well. But just the idea that you're losing, this idea that 30% is all from skeletal muscle. I mean, if that was the case, you would become very weak very fast.
Yeah.
That's a lot of skeletal muscle,
Yeah.
And skeletal muscles, once you've built it, it's pretty robust. It doesn't really require that much to maintain. There's actually was a study done in elderly where they looked at what was required to maintain the muscle mass they had built. And so they had 2 groups or 3 groups. One was on the training volume they had been doing to build it. Another group did a third, and another group did a ninth. So when I say training volume, I mean number of hard sets, right? They found the group that was on 1/9 the training volume maintained their muscle mass.
Oh, interesting.
So again,
It doesn't take a lot once you get there.
It takes a lot to build it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that probably boils down to the fact that you have what are called satellite cells. Not sure if you guys are familiar with this.
You know what that is, Brian? You stupid?
Yeah, I know what satellite cells are.
It reminds me of
Cells are the cells that
Satellite.
that go around. They rotate around the.
so that was one of my favorite when I
I'm
saw
not an idiot.
Chris tell him, when I look back, you better be in a lab coat. And so my best friend Mike actually sent Brian a
Mike
lab
sent
coat
me
that
it,
says
Mike
Comedy
sent me a
MD on
fucking
it.
Did he really?
Yes.
Why don't you wear that?
I know they sent me. It was so huge. By the way, it was
That's funny. That's what's funny.
so funny.
Well, that
You
makes it
better
better.
be wearing
That's
clown suit
hilarious,
now.
dude.
Yeah, because you're talking about glycogen, and that's boring.
You're
as all
talking about
get out.
glycogen.
Shut up, dude.
You better be on
Shut
a,
up.
You better be in a lab coat.
Oh, I'll look at you, but when I do, you better be wearing a lab coat because you're talking about glycogen. He goes, would you look at that?
Yeah, me
So
and Mike
fun.
had a good crack up. So shout out to Mike Fox for that idea.
Shout
Yeah,
out to
great.
Chris D'Elia. Did you
Sorry
see his
Brian
last-
didn't wear
Did you see
it.
D'Elia's last, did you see his last Instagram where his wife
No,
was
I
talking to
didn't.
him while he was trying to watch TV?
No, I didn't see it.
Let's take a recess. Go to that for a second and watch what he did to Kristen. This,
right, put a bookmark
This
in
makes me
satellite
laugh
cells.
so hard.
Yeah, satellite cells. Hold
Watch
that.
this. Watch this.
The top one, the first
Yeah,
one?
yeah, right there.
Babe, you know how I hired those organizers?
She stopped it. He's watching.
I've been reading about nesting, and it's this instinct where pregnant women, when they're about to go into labor, they start like hoarding blankets and they clean up all the dust in their house, and it's like a panic-driven thing to get ready for the baby. So the organizer thing was.
why is she
just
still
instinct.
talking?
It's cute.
He goes, yeah.
Watch this. Watch this.
Why the TV stop? She paused it. Why'd she pause it? Oh no.
Are you for real?
So,
He hearted it.
he's so funny.
Love it. That's great.
That is such a classic
stupid.
guy, like husband and wife thing. Your wife is just wants to talk to you about. I'm literally my wife. I love her, but I'm trying to do something like watch something or do something.
It's like a middle of a documentary.
She's
like,
got. Yeah, she's going. Do you think the baby should? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm gonna go crazy.
Okay, back to satellite.
So
cells.
God, it's so
I
funny.
think one of the reasons it's hard to build it and is to maintain it is, so muscle cells are the only, you learned that cells have a nucleus, right?
Yeah.
So muscle cells are
Yeah.
the only cells in the body that are multinucleated. So you have multiple nuclei. And we have these things called satellite cells, which sit on I believe on the sarcolemma, which is the outside of the membrane
Yeah.
of muscle cells.
Yeah.
And when you lift hard or steroids function this way, they increase satellite cell fusion. So as you fuse more of these satellite cells, it increases your overall growth potential. And then once they fuse, well, at least the common thought process is they don't unfuse. So there's a few reasons this is important. First is the reason they kind of set your muscular potential is because each myonuclei is responsible for controlling protein synthesis, which is basically how you make new muscle tissue, for a specific area. And it doesn't go past that area. So if you only have, a certain number of myonuclei, you can only get so big. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I don't have a lot of myonuclei.
You have not.
Well, you told me about your workout program, bro. You said 20 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
You said you've known him for 10
I train
years.
for 2-3 hours at a time. You know what I mean? Like,
You're right. I need to work out harder, but
Hey, or
or it doesn't matter.
no.
Or it doesn't matter.
No.
He was at
You
my
look
house.
exactly
though.
the same.
He was staying at my house, and I deadlifted heavy yesterday, and I feel
What's heavy?
it's a lot of weight, dude. Okay.
more than 100, less than 5?
Listen, both you are assholes. I was deadlifting well over 200 pounds, and
Oh,
all right.
So
Yeah.
this also actually ties back into like the concept of muscle memory. So if either of you have ever taken a break from resistance training or come back from an injury, you find that you put it back on a lot faster than it originally took to build it. That's because those myonuclei are already fused from you training previously. It's also, now I'm going to get into possible trouble. It's also the main reason why the USAPL has fought trans athletes they have a division for trans, but they
Just so you know, on the record, I'm against biological males being in female sports.
right.
Across
So and
the board. And I stand
I'm
by
all
that.
for people identifying as whatever they want. I have no problem with
they
that.
should have their own category, though.
The issue is from a scientific perspective,
But they don't pay attention to science. But keep going.
it's not about the testosterone levels you have now. Testosterone exposure during puberty, the difference, you fuse so many more satellite cells because of that you just have a greater overall growth potential as someone born, whatever, XY chromosome, right?
A male.
So a male.
A man.
And so one of the issues is just reducing that testosterone now doesn't unfuse those satellite cells. Now, there was a study done in rats, and I might butcher the study a little bit, but it's really interesting.
Well, we'll let you know.
So they,
We'll let you know if you butcher it.
I believe,
We know the study.
We know the study.
But tell them.
We know the study.
somebody in the comments, if I butcher it, let me know. I believe what happened was they had two groups, and in one group, they could actually make resistance training apparatuses for rodents, believe it or not. They had them resistance trained drug-free. The other group got anabolic steroids,
Hell yeah.
right? So they did that for a certain period of time.
Bro.
Then they let them untrain, and then they had both groups train again, but both groups were drug-free the second time. The group that got steroids the first time still grew muscle faster the second time.
Oh, interesting. Because the satellite cells.
That is the. I mean, we can't say for sure, but that's our thinking, right? So again, you have that initial extra exposure to testosterone. It appears to confer long-term benefits.
And I assume those rats are male and female. It's not just male rats.
I believe it was male rats.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. The point
Good
being
question.
that these satellite cells, at least when it comes to like your muscular growth potential, that appears to be like, at least based on our current understanding, somebody like Galpin would know way more about this than me. But at least based on our current understanding, that kind of sets your muscular growth potential. It's
The
really
number
interesting
of nuclei that can fuse.
correct. Yeah.
So he
So
has,
it doesn't go away.
He has more than I do. This
Probably
fucking,
I mean,
probably
maybe.
1,000 times more.
this
Maybe.
fucking galoot.
No, we know.
When you have somebody who suffers from gigantism like this fucking galoot,
What?
you're a galoot gigante. Does he suffer from gigante disease? Because he's too fucking big.
Too big.
And how do you reduce nose size?
well, 2 for 1 then, right? If he knows.
No, it's true.
I mean, I'm not touching that.
By the way, I'm the worst student because you're going through this and now I'm poking it.
I'm like,
See, he didn't do well in school.
like, is this normal? Is he
He didn't
supposed
do
to
well in
touch him?
school.
I'm literally trying not to grab your ear and fuck with you while we're talking. Wait.
I don't know. I don't fuck
Okay.
with people with cauliflower ears. That's
this-
a rule. That's a life rule for me.
I try to. It never works out for me. But,
But for you, like people in your lane, I do find it.
Snake's lane.
I mean, I know, no pun intended. But I assume it's just natural. Like it happens with comics or podcasts, and like you get to a certain level, and then there become not a jealousy thing, but it's like I'm sure another guy at your level's debunking what you say, and it's like becomes like this battleground. You guys
I
should
mean,
just kill each other.
I've had some people like call me out on what they felt were false claims that I made. Now, usually, if you go through what I say, I try to be very careful about how I frame things. Like, if I plant my flag really strongly, it's because I feel very strongly based on the data. But oftentimes, I'll say something like, just like I was saying about satellite cells. We think, probably, maybe.
I always say that
like
about you. You say
it's not your research.
Scientists like you
Yeah.
and Andy use the words. I don't know. Sometimes, maybe it depends. Like
Right,
a lot. And
right.
I that's what I
don't like
appreciate.
that.
Yeah, nobody does because you want a fast fix. You gigante.
No, you want a
fucking-
fast fix.
You're a
You
gigante.
deadlift 100 pounds.
More than that, dude. 300 pounds. I have it on video
But why do it, right?
because it makes a difference. Because I want
You
to
know this guy for 10 years and you look like this.
last night we were eating.
If I've known him for 10 years, I would be jacked.
Last night we were talking, and he was like, "What?" I go, "Well, I might want to put on muscle." He goes, "Well, that's a." Like, he just turned. And I kw it was going to be a long. He was like that. I was like, "Never mind."
I don't know why you're
can't
entertaining.
do
I'd be like, hey, can we just get through
I
dinner?
won't do it. I won't do it because I asked him. I was getting a protein shake, and I was like, "Hey, should I? You know about this stuff. Should I get the whey protein? Should I get the plant protein? Should I get the whey protein isolate?" And he's like, "Well, it depends on." And then I know, but you think he goes, "It doesn't matter though, does it? It doesn't really matter for you. Won't make a difference." I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're fucking right.
Just drink it.
Talk about intermittent fasting and talk about how people think if you eat less, you live longer. There's a lot of science to
I'm
that.
wishy-washy. We could leave here. I'll stop intermittent fasting right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what I'll say is, first off, intermittent fasting does work. Now,
Hey, man.
it doesn't necessarily work for the reasons people want it to work, which is autophagy or all these buzzwords.
Yeah, autophagy, you fucking idiot.
People who intermittent fast, they have shown that they tend to spontaneously eat less, right? So it's basically a way to control calories. when you look at the studies where they equate calories like across a week, because there's different forms of intermittent fasting, right? You got 16-8, you got 24, you got alternate day fasting.
24 is insane. What are we doing here?
Right. So
people do that.
they do. So
I do it to my fish sometimes.
what I will say is, if it helps you control calories, great. It doesn't appear to be better than calorie-equated caloric restriction from a physiological perspective.
Over, you're saying like throughout, let's say you wake
So,
up
like,
at 5 a.m. and you have breakfast, you're still eating less calories over the day instead of
So
just
if you take two groups of people and one does like, say, your normal 16-8 intermittent fasting, another group just eats continuously throughout the day, if they eat the same amount of calories and protein, they don't really see differences in weight loss or
I'm
muscle mass.
starving right now.
So now,
happens. You
that
start
being
craving.
said, intermittent fasting can still be a great tool for some people if they don't want to track calories or like they don't want to, So by limiting your feeding window, as long as you're not super compensating for what that time you're not feeding, because some people will do intermittent fasting wrong where it's like, well, it's my feeding window, so I can eat whatever I want because I was fasting.
Well, last night
I ate
fucking
Taco
did
Bell
that.
before I
Yeah.
saw you. But I know it's in the window.
Triggered!
I know it's in the window.
Last night I was like, I didn't eat much. I ate breakfast and then I had like a little protein shake, and then I was like, by the time we got to Scopa, I celebrated
Game on.
your birthday. Game on. I took him
took him
because you
instead
didn't.
of
It was
me?
raining.
You didn't even tell me.
I called you.
No, you didn't.
I called you and I was like, you're not kidding. You're not coming out
Called
in the
me
rain.
to quit firing the kid.
The I had to quit fighting the kid and take it to Scopa. Good news, bad news.
Yeah.
I'm quitting. Good news is we're going to Scopa for your
okay.
birthday. But we went there.
Scopa was good.
I ate
Yeah,
all
that's
the
our
food. I ate
spot.
all the fucking food though.
You got-
Stuffed
did you get-
mushrooms.
I know this dude he's like the mayor of Scopa.
Yeah.
He had like 18 people
Well,
come up to him.
Well, he has to ask me if you can eat there. You know how it goes,
What?
right? But did you get the T-bone there?
No, I got
Pork
the
chop.
pork
They
chop.
got this new pork
It was
chop.
good.
No, I've had the pork chop. It's
Oh, no,
great.
no, new one. New one.
The T-bone's the best steak in LA.
Bubba, 100%.
How could you do that to our friend?
100%. But
You know him 10 years. You never had the T-bone at
the
Scopa?
new pork chop's so good.
It's great.
Oh,
Everybody's
and I had the for the first time. I had the chicken.
Calamari was
parmesan.
good.
Fuck, that
Wine
was
was
good.
good.
The wine was stupid. My
Wine
boy
was really
Ian,
good,
who's the
yeah.
sommelier there, he gets me the stuff that's not.
Who paid?
He grabbed it before I could.
Well,
quick on the draw.
alligator arms there.
What? That's
Oh,
no.
the check comes, T-Rex comes out. Like, man, I'm so
talking about?
sore.
That's such a lie.
I can only deadlift 100 pounds.
Dude, shut the fuck up, man. You're lucky I don't have any reach.
But when you go out to eat, you're not too worried about
So
calories and stuff. That's stupid.
so my thing is, I've tracked for so long.
Bring up his body
That
right now.
it's-
On the
You have an idea like of everything.
I get a decent idea, right?
Even with like the
Now,
sauces at the restaurant, you know what I'm saying? The butter with the steak.
End of the day, I'm gonna be off. But the important thing is, that like if I
I'd
get
hit
close
it.
enough,
That's what the internet would say.
Jack
That's the
scientist.
internet talk.
Yep.
just myself.
Yeah, you're Shred City, dude.
41 years old.
And you got a brain
Chris
on you?
Hemsworth liked that photo.
Oh, he
Hell,
did.
you damn right he did.
Dax Shepard. He did Dax Shepard,
I love
armchair
Dax.
expert.
I
know you
love
love
Dax. Love Dax.
I was like, when I found out that, I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like,
when
'cause
Thor likes your shit?
Yeah. So I'm still like,
That's a PhD
from-
right there, ladies and gentlemen. You know Dom D'Agostino?
Yeah, Dom and I are friends.
Yeah.
Like I've known him. So we were on
guy.
Rogan together. I knew Dom back in 2000 and
He's a
7 or
monster.
8?
He's a.
so we were both on the bodybuilding.com forums, which was like social media before we had social media.
That was the original forums. People forget
Were
because
you-
I was on there.
Really? No
yeah,
shit.
Yeah,
Okay,
bodybuilding.com was the original forum.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's a little weird. Yeah,
yeah.
man.
They had like 8
Bodybuilding.com
million people on
It used to
there.
be
It was crazy.
massive.
Really?
Yeah.
Massive.
Oh
Massive.
yeah, it was crazy.
There's so much information out there and good information, you know?
So I forget
there
who
was
asked me
dicey.
the other day. Actually, no, Rogan was talking about this with I forget who it was, but he said, you have access to so many people now who put out good information, and I agree. People ask me like, man, there's more bullshit out there than ever. Yes, there is, because the internet just has so much stuff. But if you know where to look, you can find really good information. And actually, one of the things I think that I would tell people is, I interviewed a guy named Alan Levinovitz, and he is actually a religious studies, I believe, is his background. But he did a book about naturalism, which I thought was interesting. But he made a really good comment about how to find experts. And he said, it actually is very strange because what you need to look for to identify an expert, it seems counterintuitive. So the words I'm using, maybe, possibly, you're looking for someone who actually sounds unsure. But the people who say always, never, best, worst, it'd be like, as an MMA fighter, if I went to you and was like, so what's the best combination?
Yeah,
It's like, well, it depends on like 500 things.
There's a million things that go
right.
Yeah.
Like, what's the best submission?
Yeah.
It depends.
But
right?
if you're like,
What's the
only
best
boxing works.
Right.
Only boxing
Yeah.
here. I'd be like, oh, this
No,
is
you just
bullshit.
do, jab, jab, hook.
Just
each
boxing
time,
and treadmill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
makes
then the same thing, like, what's the best joke? What's the best kind of joke? Like, take your pick. So I think people really, the idea of like black and white answers is really appealing to people, but unfortunately things are rarely that simple. And there's a lot of nuance to it. So getting back to intermittent fasting and longevity, so there's only one study out there that suggested, so first, let me back up. We've known for probably 20 years that in lab animals, if you calorically restrict them, that they live longer than animals that are not calorically restricted. But as someone who did animal research, I understand how these studies are done. So first off, really the only studies you should be paying attention to in animals are the primate studies when it comes to longevity, and here's why. Lab rodents, so rodents are not like humans, shocker. They're actually a good model for protein metabolism, but for longevity, not so much, and here's why. They grow throughout the entire course of their life. They start to slow down as they get up in age, but they continue to grow throughout the course of their life. Humans don't do that.
Yeah.
Humans, take obesity out of it because that's a recent problem. Humans grow in terms of lean mass up to a certain point, and then they start coming back down, right? That's a normal, and most people end up losing weight overall as they get older as well. So kind of a poor model of longevity. The other thing is, rodents only live like 2 years. So when you're trying to like look at like for example, intermittent fasting in a day, well, 16 hours of a rat's life is more like weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when we look at primates, I'm thinking of a study, I think it was 30% caloric restriction. Now, the problem with some of these animal studies is a lot of times caloric restriction is 30% less than ad libitum, what they consume ad libitum when they have free access to food. Guess what lab animals do when they have free access to food?
Overeat.
They overeat. So what you find is initially they lose a little bit of weight and then it plateaus and it stops. They're just weight stable. So really what the data says to me is it's not so much caloric restriction, it's that these animals never become fat. They never become obese.
Yep.
Right? That is the true protective effect. Again, this is my opinion, and I'm sure there's some people out there who would argue with me. But because you've got some people who are like, well, I want to build muscle, but I don't want to overeat calories because it's going to shorten my life. And I'm like, I think there's a pretty big difference between somebody who is like trying to increase their lean mass, is resistance training constantly, and consuming like a diet high in fiber and protein and not, just plowing down a bunch of junk, versus somebody who's sedentary, sitting on the couch eating potato chips.
Yep.
Right? I think there's a big difference there.
But didn't you say that people who are skinny, like
So that's yeah. So
can't trust them.
So this comes up.
can't,
where we're going with
if
it?
they're bone thin, they have to be a
They have
pervert too.
they have no muscle
So-
mass.
Hey man,
Don't trust
I
them.
have muscle mass. I have a good mind.
Damn. So, I was watching Gwyneth Paltrow's recent interview where, like, man, that just set science back like 10 years. But like, I'm listening to her diet, and I'm like, you don't eat anything. Like, you're petrified of everything. And
Because
that-
she's into
Except for
that.
hitting guys on a ski slope.
so
Right. Getting sued for that.
I didn't know.
the evidence actually shows that, yes, being obese is a risk factor for mortality, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. But being underweight, you actually have just as high, if not higher, mortality rates than people who are overweight.
What my mother says, she's 82. She goes, all her friends who are always skinny, they all dropped off. It's all her friends who have some weight on them, still kicking.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is as you get older, the amount of lean mass you have becomes very, very critical. Peter Attia talks about this, that grip strength and lean mass are very strong predictors of longevity past like, a certain age. And the other thing is too, when you
Hey, stop looking at me.
We did grip strength. And
Yeah, but you're a fucking. You are a gorilla gigante. You suffer from gorilla gigante.
Dude, my grip strength destroyed you. That's not saying much for me. It's not something I want to hang on my man.
Okay, then you're 270. You got weighed yesterday. The secret's out, everybody.
That's 270.
He's 270 pounds. The doctors weighed him.
And I was almost 6'4" and a half.
I'm 170 exactly. 100 pounds heavier than me, gigante.
I want to see the receipts.
Yeah.
I know. You
Giant.
suffer from gorillaism.
Giant.
Yeah.
Giant. Intermittent fasting though.
That's why you're so fucking stupid strong. How come he's so strong? Just bones and tendons.
I've been lifting since I was in 4th grade.
You played football too,
While you were
right?
sucking your mom's
Played
tit,
football.
I was lifting weights. Yeah, I played football for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I actually remember because I was really into watching The Ultimate Fighter for a while. I think what was the season you were
Season
on?
10.
Is that with Rampage?
Rampage, yeah.
Oh my God, that was
Best
such a
season
good
ever.
season.
Yeah.
Just
Most watched
tearing
season
the door
ever,
down
too.
and shit. Oh man,
I remember
I can't even imagine that, like being stuck in a house with people you got to fight. That's got to be.
I
wild.
wrestled.
I tell you what, I had a good time. Like I thought,
Did you?
yeah, I really did. The people had like bad experience on there, but I was like, man, if I just do well on this, I'm set.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like 6 weeks.
and even
Dude,
if you
this
don't
ain't
get the
shit.
contract, if you perform well, they're
Yeah,
gonna
you're
give you
still gonna
fights.
find a
Wasn't
spot.
the pressure
Yeah.
like too much though? I mean,
No, especially back then, it was like more
why? Because
pressure the
you
better.
were just young and
But I liked watching the guys fall from the pressure.
because you had been an athlete on a high. You'd like gone through that D1 program,
Yeah, yeah.
which was insane. So for you,
Hey, any
you,
other
were,
stupid question?
you were used to competing. It was like you.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys didn't have that experience, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what you find, a lot of that stuff transfers. I mean, we were talking about this last night. Like, me, obviously, it's different. Like, I'm not going up against another human being. I'm going up against the barbell or whatever. But like, I've been through the ringer with injuries and all kinds of stuff, and you find that like,
And the mental strength to do
Yeah.
that stuff. When you
Yeah.
fail and you got to hit that, PR, it's tough.
and then like lifting weights gave me more confidence to do things like go after a PhD and be an entrepreneur and all that kind of
Were
stuff.
you always smart? Like as a kid, you were the brain of the operation?
I got good grades, but I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 6.
But do we
and-
believe that? Am I right? Right?
I can tell you that
Pharmaceutical
my brain is
pushing.
So I think, in my opinion, ADHD is probably one of the more overdiagnosed, but also underdiagnosed things that are out there, because you definitely have people whose parents are like, they're not doing well, give them medicine.
Yeah. He won't pay attention. Medicate
Right,
him. It's like
right.
he's 7.
So I think what helped me was medication helped me, but also I went to therapy. Like I worked with a counselor.
Oh, you had good
Like-
parents.
Yeah. Oh, my parents were great, and very supportive. Like my mom is the kind of person who, like, she's sorry, Mom. She's like kind of high anxiety and can be a little bit much sometimes. But man, when there's a problem, Mom does not hide her head in the sand. Mom's
That's
like,
good.
we're doing A, B, C, D. Like this is how we're doing it. So she actually became the head of the Southwest Indiana, what's called CHAD, which is Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Disorder. So she became the president of that chapter, like 2 years after I was diagnosed with it, because she got so far into
That's
it.
cool.
Wow.
So you've
anyways,
always had ADHD.
yeah. So I had, I was very impulsive. Like for example, in conversation, I have had to learn how to like wait my turn
Tell me
instead
about
of just wanting to interject.
Yep.
I have a hard time focusing on tasks for a while unless it's something I love, and then I can focus on it for ridiculous amounts of time. So I did get good grades, but I really like in high school. I took honors classes, but I had to study really hard. Like I was studying for multiple weeks at a time for like chemistry tests and biology tests, whereas some of my peers, like they would just like study the night before, and go in and get A's,
Jesus.
So, did well there, but it helped me actually struggling. And I talked about like, this is the hardest part about having kids. I have 2 kids.
What ages?
My daughter's 6 and my son's 9.
Okay.
The hardest thing is like knowing that they have to fail a little bit. Like
the
they
worst
got to
part.
struggle a little bit.
The worst.
And you got to like, you can't step in too much, because what helped me when I got to college was that I struggled, not getting bad grades, but I did have to work pretty hard, and I developed good study habits. So when things actually got hard, I already knew how to do it. And all these kids who just skated, like just breezed by high
They're kinda
school,
screwed.
when it got hard, They didn't know what to do.
And where'd you go to
You know?
college?
So I went to a small college named Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida, and like phenomenal experience. I had great professors. It was a really small teaching-based school. I had great mentors, and then I did my PhD at University of Illinois. Again, really good school. The nutritional sciences department is perennial, like a top 5 nutrition for grad school. And my PhD advisor was a guy named Don Layman, and he was a phenomenal advisor. And you know, again, one nice thing was I actually, as I went up in academia, I did better and better because I developed those study habits. Because I was getting into stuff I was more and more interested in.
Yeah.
You know, in high school, it's like
It's tough.
great. You know,
do you ever fantasize about being able to impose a diet on the American population?
not really.
You don't. If you had to, what would you? Because
Dictator?
well, what I like about you is you eat candy.
Man, I
you
always
do shit.
say I'm glad I'm not in charge.
No, I don't want that gig.
Yeah, but
So I think one of the things
Do you hate fat people? Right? That's what he's asking.
so
Because I do.
no, hey, no, I'm not saying.
I didn't hire George, so he got skinny.
I'm not fat phobic.
so
He's like, I'm going to leave.
just see myself out. You know, when it comes to the obesity epidemic, I'm not sure what the answer is.
I do.
Because
Ask me. So ask
Oh,
me. Watch
God.
this.
Yeah,
I want to
tell
tell me
him what
Tell me
you're-
what's wrong with me right now. I'm going to do something. So say you're obese.
when I turn my head,
Yeah, you better be fat.
Now I'm going to put my lab coat on.
Okay.
Now you're fat. You're very fat. You ask me advice. I'm going to give you advice. You tell me if I'm on. Watch
give
this.
me advice.
Okay. Look.
This for the masses, Brian?
Yeah.
I'm fat.
God.
If you're a heavy, ready? Okay, ready?
I'm sorry.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Okay, so and this is what I do. Okay, no bread, nothing that's been through a mill. I want you eating vegetables, only vegetables. You can have yams or potatoes twice a week, maybe.
Stop. I don't have a lot of money. I live in an apartment.
Vegetables are not that expensive.
They are, though, especially right now. And yams, I don't have a lot of money, Brian. So what do? Because Taco Bell's right up the street.
Shut
it's
up.
$1.
Shut up.
What
Make
if you're
more.
a single mom and you work in 2 jobs
Yeah.
and you don't have time to cook?
That's how we knew you grew up rich. Any other brain busters?
Okay, hold on. But all right, hold on. I would give them some money because I'm also the
you give
emperor.
us some money.
There you go.
Okay.
Here's your shopping stipend. You fuck. How about that? Just fucking rebutted
ruin.
you fuck.
Ruin.
Here's some money.
Brian's like,
Okay.
here's your
How
diet.
do you make sure-
Caviar.
how do you make sure they only buy those things?
Vegetables, because I will whip you.
Yeah, we're going to hit you.
So each obese person is going to get their own personal whipping.
The children will
person?
be whipped.
Just your children.
The children.
You
Well,
see running a concentration camp.
yep,
Brian.
yep. I have these fantasies of you have to eat. You
It's
can
not
have,
realistic, buddy.
You can eat tubers twice a week. You can have some white rice. It's all vegetables, meat, and some fats like some avocado and
Avocados, because those are cheap. Keep going. Listen to the rich kid.
and you'll lose weight.
I mean, yes, you would lose weight.
Fucking A, man.
However,
Dr. Callen in the house.
I could also just say, just eat less calories.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are good
getting
calories and
them-
bad calories.
Getting them to
Layne.
do that is different. Well,
Educated.
okay,
He always
so
says this. He's so
so
stupid.
let's take something like
I hate
sugar.
how stupid
He
you are.
actually he's setting me up because he knows what I'm going to say.
Just saying there are good calories, bad calories.
So a calorie is a unit of energy. Okay, it's a unit of measurement. So say, like people will say often, well, all calories aren't created equal. No, they are. And here's why. Because that's like saying that all seconds on a clock are not created equal.
Yep.
Or all miles per hour are not created equal. Or all dollars are not created equal. No, they are. But all sources of calories are not necessarily created equal in terms of their effects on satiety and thermogenesis. So, for example, to your point, protein has what's called a higher thermic effect of food. So if you think about our bodies kind of like internal combustion engines, like when you climb in your car, let's assume we're not in Brian's Tesla and we're in a car that takes gas.
Yeah.
The car doesn't just spontaneously go, right? You have to turn the key or press a button, and that uses the starter and the battery to start the car so you can get the energy out of the the gas that's in the tank. Well, your body is kind of similar in that you have to put energy in to get energy out of the food you eat, and that's called the thermic effect of food. So when you look at something like dietary fat, Dietary fat has a TEF of like 0 to 3%. So for example, if you eat 100 calories from dietary fat, you net 97 to 100. So most of it. Carbohydrates are like 5 to 10%. So if you eat 100 calories from carbohydrate, you net about 90 to 95.
That you're using. You use it.
Your net metabolized, well, not metabolizable energy, but your net from it. Protein is about 20 to 30%. So if you eat 100 calories of protein, you're netting 70 to 80. So you're getting a little bit of a metabolic advantage with protein. You also have the advantage.
Because it takes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it takes more work to break down. Is that what it is?
So it doesn't appear to be in the digestion end of the protein. It actually is probably due to the fact that dietary protein increases muscle protein synthesis. So muscle protein synthesis is an energetically costly process. It kind of creates this like feudal cycle where even if you're, like, let's say you don't have a net deposition of muscle. So for example, if you increase protein synthesis, a lot of times protein degradation goes up at the same time. So it's kind of this feudal cycle. You're just increasing the turnover. But that turnover expends more energy. So we think that the thermogenic effect of protein is actually due to its effects, or at least I think it's due to the effects on increasing muscle protein synthesis and overall protein turnover. So it's not really the digestion or absorption of it. It's the actual metabolism of those amino acids.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, fiber may have some thermogenic properties as well. And the thing about fiber and protein is they have an effect on satiety as well. Of the three, I have to caveat this with satiety appears to be very food dependent, like the individual food. So, for example, one of the most
satiety being when you're satiated.
Right. So one of the most satiating foods that we know of is actually a plain baked potato, right? So one of the things that I heard this yesterday on Rogan, he said, I could just eat so much pasta. Can you? Or is it pasta when it's slathered in oil?
Yeah.
And sauce, right? Because pasta, just plain pasta with no oil on it, really isn't that palatable.
No.
Right? A plain baked potato without butter and salt is not really that palatable.
No, it's not.
Right? So it's very satiating. So I think people really mix up when they think, I hear people say carb foods, and they'll talk about French fries. French fries have almost the same amount of calories from fat as they do carbohydrate. People say donuts, ice cream. Most of those foods have similar amounts of calories from carbohydrates and fats. So are they really high carb foods or are they just high calorie foods? And the one commonality that most very hyper palatable foods have is they're like ultra processed. So they're just created so that it's easy to overeat and you don't have that much satiety from them. So for example, Kevin Hall did a study. He's one of the top researchers in the world at the NIH, where he took people from a minimally processed food diet and had them go to an ultra processed food diet and said basically just eat however much you want, right? They spontaneously increased their caloric intake by 500 calories a day.
Because of the processed food, because it's more palatable.
Yeah, and they
Because
don't
it's
feel
so
full,
palatable.
right? They're not
Right,
feeling as
exactly.
So Taco Bell, you
Exactly.
can eat more of it than you could just
Correct.
food in its raw state.
So-
that's interesting. That's probably why when you eat whole foods, you tend to eat less without
Correct.
realizing it.
More fiber. Now,
Don't look at me.
the thing
Don't
is,
look at me with soft eyes. You just got lost in my eyes for a second.
We made a good
You were
point.
worried that I was going to be leaving.
No.
Oh shit! I made a good point. That's true.
Yeah, you made a good point.
But you know what I mean? Like that's interesting.
Yeah.
one thing that I will say though is like, listen, because now it's great advice to say, let's eat less processed food, whatever. The issue is, what are you going to do? Ban processed food?
No.
Like
That's
we can't
unrealistic, yeah.
really put the bullet back in the gun. You know what I mean? Like we are where we are. And even like doing things like, well, let's tax this stuff, that.
But what would you?
that only
I'm sorry
hurts
to
the
interrupt,
poor people.
But wouldn't you count pasta at an Italian restaurant a processed food to an extent?
So here's the thing. It's like,
Oh,
what do you, that's why I'm very
Glad you
careful
went there.
about like labels, because it's like, you can argue that every food now is processed to a certain extent.
But I don't want to live my life without processed food.
So I
It's
think
fucking-
what I'll tell people is like hyper palatable foods that don't have a strong effect on satiety. Right.
Got it.
So, think about like a 7-Eleven foods, right? Like stuff that's
Doritos.
prepackaged,
Doritos are
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Delicious.
But
Delicious. Fucking
But I think
delicious.
it's important to point out that even eating processed food, if you control calories, you can still lose weight, because there is this perception that, food choices are more important than how many calories you eat. No, food choices can impact how many calories you eat because of satiety. But there was a classic study done where they were looking at sugar, right? And they said the hypothesis was, if we equate calories, but one group is eating high sugar, another group eating low sugar, the low sugar group's going to lose more body fat. So they provided all the foods to these participants. Both groups were on a 1,100 calorie diet, so a low calorie diet, right? One group ate over 100 grams of sugar a day. The other group ate about 10. So 10 times difference in sugar, but the same protein, carb, fat intake. Both groups lost basically the exact same amount of weight.
Oh, interesting.
And both groups improved their blood markers. Both groups improved their insulin sensitivity. Now,
because it was all about the restriction of calories.
Because they restricted calories. Now,
That's the number one takeaway. Just
that's the
quit
biggest
eating
one.
something.
Because but
Right.
my thing is,
but if you limit sugar, that can be a good way to decrease your calorie intake. Because if you're not eating, I tell people try not to focus so much on sugar because like fruit has sugar, right? But fruit is like. Very few people are going to say, "Man, I just can't stop eating apples." You know, like that's not.
Yeah,
and that that's why it's very important not to become dogmatic about these sorts of things because, you know, all this stuff, all carbohydrates break down to sugar in your body.
But
anyway,
you hear a lot about
know?
sugar being toxic, and you hear about phytonutrients and needing those micronutrients in your body.
Again, I think eating a lot of fruits and vegetables is a great idea, right? But like, again, like
But
even
people
even
like
something
Saladino say that fruits and vegetables might be famine food, or you don't need them as long as you eat a lot of meat. And the Liver King says that too.
Yeah, I would strongly disagree.
Hello,
based on the
darkness, my
research
old
data.
friend.
Yes.
Like, you know, George used to be 450 pounds.
Literally.
Amazing.
450,
Awesome.
man.
Such a badass.
So how'd you do it?
I restricted my calories at first to 1,800 a day and then down to about 1,600 a day and started working out 6 days a week. And after 8 months, I got BMI surgery, so that helped with my hunger and that kind of stuff, more just for my mental health and like make sure I can keep it up.
Yeah.
And after a year and a half and listening to these guys,
Look at him.
taught me a lot.
It's fantastic.
Look at that, man.
I did not hire him when he looked like that.
It's amazing, George.
So
I'm always so impressed with you.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think, you know, one of the
Jesus.
you guys know.
I'm just kidding.
But what's amazing is how.
No, look good he looks now.
Yep. Incredible.
So you guys know Ethan Suplee, right? You guys are familiar with him?
I don't think so.
So he's an actor. He was in like Remember the Titans. He was the really fat guy in Remember the Titans.
Oh yeah.
So now he's like 220 and jacked.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he was in American History X.
Yes,
He's a big fat
correct,
guy. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Great dude.
Is
And
that him right there? Holy shit.
so
He was like this before.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, and I'm going to tie this back to Ethan here in a second. I told this story yesterday, actually. There was a systematic review done of people the number of people who lose weight and keep it off over the long term is very, very small. It depends on the statistics you use, but if you look out past like 3 years of weight loss, over 90% of people put it all back on, or most of it.
Why is that?
Because
It's not going to be you.
in the short term, because they don't sustain the habits and behaviors that
It's
they
hard to
use
do.
to lose the weight. If they don't sustain those, you're not going to keep it off.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I tell people, I'm like, hey, cut out processed foods as long as you can keep doing that. Do low carb as long as you can keep doing that. Do intermittent fasting as long as you can keep doing that. But if it feels like you're running a sprint and you can't keep it up, you got to think about doing it a different way, because if you can't keep that up, the data says you're going to put it back on.
Yep.
So a lot of it's mental.
What was really, this is why I talk about mindset so much now. And this systematic review, looking at people who had lost weight and kept it off and the commonalities they had, there was stuff you expected on there. Self-monitoring, so they weighed themselves frequently. Cognitive restraint, so when I say that, it means like restricting calories or restricting carbohydrates or restricting fats or some form of restriction, right? They exercised. Over 70% of people who lose weight and keep it off exercise. And actually the benefit to exercise, just a little side note for weight loss, is not so much about how many calories you expend. It's actually because exercise may have an effect of sensitizing you to satiety signals. People who exercise actually don't tend to fully, you would think, oh, well, if you just expend more calories, you'll be hungry and eat more. The research doesn't support that. The research actually supports that exercise may have, in fact, a small, like an anorectic effect.
Oh, wow. and an antidepressant effect.
Oh,
too.
for sure. Usually, even if you didn't
That's a
lose
given.
weight from exercise, you should still exercise.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing that popped up that I'd never heard of, that made perfect sense, but really kind of blew my mind, was they identified, most of these people said, I had to form a new identity. And I thought that was really interesting. And Ethan, when he posts on Instagram, when he does a workout and he posts a video of it or a selfie or whatever, he says, I killed my clone today. So when I read this review,
So
I
cool.
immediately texted him. I was like, is this what you're talking about? This whole idea of developing a
Love
new
that.
identity.
I killed my clone today.
And he said, absolutely. Wow. So he's like, I'm this now, but there's still that 500-pound person who lives in me.
Yeah, that fat kid never.
And I have to choose to be this every day.
Yeah, it's a choice.
And if you think about how hard it is to get past this stuff for people who are obese or people who have eating disorders. If you're a cocaine addict or you're an alcoholic, you can abstain. You can just choose not to do it. Or if you're a gambling addict, you can choose not to do it. You can't choose not to eat.
You have to eat.
So
It's the worst addiction.
imagine being a cocaine addict or a gambling addict or a heroin addict and say, you just got to do a little bit of cocaine today, or a little bit of alcohol today, or a little bit of gambling.
It's the worst
right?
addiction by far.
It's very, very difficult. Wow. And so one of the things I'll tell people is reverse engineer this. Okay, so and this goes for anything in life, right? Not just losing weight. If you want to become somebody new, think about who that person is. What do you think their day-to-day life looks like? And just start doing that. Mm-hmm. People want to emulate the end product, but they don't want to emulate the process. And the process is what gets you there. I mean, again, competing in high-level athletics, I'm sure you've seen guys come in the gym who they want to find this way to short circuit the work. And it's like, every once in a while, you get a guy like a John Jones or something like that who comes in as a phenom, whatever. But for most people, you're going to do it 10, 15, 20 years.
It's a long road.
And you're going to, we were talking about comedy last night. You're going to do it badly for a while.
Yeah.
You're going to suck for a while.
Start getting good.
So true.
I mean, even I'm friends with Lando Venata, who's a lightweight in the UFC.
Yeah, he's a stud.
And he said, what's is it the flyweight champ from Mexico? What's his name?
Oh, Brandon Moreno?
Yeah. He said when that kid first came I guess he came to Albuquerque and he was training with him. He's like, he sucked.
Yeah.
He's like, he was not good. He's like, and 5 years later, he goes, wins a UFC title.
Stud.
He's like, and you look at people like, one of my favorite stories is like Bisping, right? This dude was basically like kind of a gatekeeper for a long time, like almost a journeyman, right? And went and who'd he beat? It was
Luke
Rockhold, who knocked him out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, imagine the mental fortitude it takes to go in with somebody who not just beat you, but like knocked you out after you've had all these times where this didn't work out for you, and to keep showing up, and to finally
you got to
win
remember,
that.
Michael Bisping also, there was a lot of things going on. Yeah, he's just one of those guys, man. He's just such a competitor.
It's that mind. It's that's why, again, like, you can talk about nutrition, X's and O's all the time. And I love that stuff. Like, I love digging into the mechanism stuff. But at the end of the day, like, so it's a decision has to be made that you're just sick and tired of whatever it is you're dealing with in your life. And I'll give the example. My younger brother, he was a drug addict. Okay. And I asked him, like, he went to prison for a while. And I asked him, like, well, I forget how I kind of came up one day, but I called him and I was like, hey, man, if I haven't told you this recently, I'm proud of you, But I was like, what was your rock bottom? Like, was it going to prison? And he goes, nah. He goes, I just woke up one day and I just realized I lose everything. I get a relationship and I lose it. I get a job and I lose it. I get some money and I lose it. I just got tired of fucking losing.
Damn.
And I think about how powerful that is, right? And
Yeah, you get tired of that
Eric Thomas, who's a motivational speaker, he says, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, that's when we change. And Ethan had a great, when he was on, I think he was on my podcast, or maybe I was on his podcast. And he said, I did a ruck today, a 50-pound ruck, right? And that's really hard. Think about, I used to have 6 of those on.
Damn.
He's like, actually, when people like tell me like how hard exercise is, I'm like, me doing this for an hour or two a day is way easier than how hard it was for me to live being 500 pounds.
Is that how you feel, George?
Yeah, he was the whale.
Yeah.
I bet.
He's like, I would have to check a chair, like before I sat down, to make sure that the chair wasn't going to break.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah,
All the stuff that he's
I broke
saying.
a lot of chairs.
Yeah. Do you talk to yourself a certain way? Like,
Yeah, I mean, when I realized it, it was my 21st birthday. It was the first like little bit of Corona. I was watching you guys. You guys would bring on guys like Layne that would come and discuss this openly, and it just one day hit me, and I was like, I gotta. If I don't do something now, I don't know when it's gonna happen.
And is your family all big too?
Yeah. And after like I lost weight, my sister lost weight, my mom lost weight, like
Because they saw you do it.
that's so cool.
like
It's cool, right?
Yeah. it's
And I
very
think like
awesome.
you really,
Badass.
you can't get past that just internal decision like no more. You know what I mean? Like you just decide no more.
That's right.
I know that probably sounds super ableist, but every single person I've talked to people who are drug addicts who are like, you know, they put me into rehab a few different times and I wasn't serious about it. And then just one day that was it.
Yeah.
You know? And Robert Downey Jr. had a great quote about this, actually. I was listening to a motivational speech the other day. And I think he was on Oprah. This is years ago, like after he had
All
gotten
his
clean.
scandal stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, it's really not that hard to fix these seemingly ghastly problems in your life. What's hard is to decide because you have to become somebody else. You cannot become that new version of yourself while dragging your old habits behind you as an anchor, right? And even if it's positive change, human beings don't like change, right?
No.
So the idea of becoming somebody new is really difficult. I mean, just think about like,
like the unknown.
I mean, I don't want to make assumptions, but like stopping competing in MMA, that must have been a really hard decision where you're like, who am I now? Right?
We were there.
Yeah, right. So same thing for, you know, I'm kind of fortunate in like now I kind of got a few different identities like scientist and, you know, entrepreneur and then as a competitor, but still like when the day comes and I'm not going to do competitive powerlifting anymore, it's going to be like, it's going to be hard, you know? And it's because now it's like I have to go create a new person, even if it's a positive, you know, it's a mostly positive transition.
Still scary because
It's
it's
still
not
scary.
your routine you were doing. It's just a different set of tools that you're using now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What does your
And-
app Carbon do?
So, just to give a little background, not only did I have the education and competed myself, I started coaching people online back in 2005. So before everybody on Instagram was an online coach,
Yeah.
I did it. And I think I looked like I still have a few clients, but for the most part, I sync most. Yeah, that's it. So I realized like I could only work with like 100 people at a time, and that was like, you know, I was working all the
a lot.
time.
Yeah,
it was a
you're
lot,
full-time
you know,
gig.
all the time, and like I wouldn't have had time to put out content like I do.
How many
review
people have signed up
studies.
for this thing? How many people?
I don't want to give our exact number, but it's tens of thousands. And we've basically done no paid marketing either. This has mostly been word of mouth and me promoting it.
Yep.
Well, it's cool. Google used Bryan for their logo.
So
That is
The idea
not
of-
how white I am in the face.
the idea was,
you.
how could I scale this, right? Could we design an algorithm that would basically do online nutrition coaching? You know, so when you open our app up, it kind of looks like MyFitnessPal, although I would say our user interface is much better.
And do you have to pay for your app?
Yeah, so it's $10 a month, and here's the app. So you know it has a tracker in there, but the real benefit to it is like, so for example, I need to check in today, so this shows my progress and whatnot towards my goal, and then when I check in, put in my information, it may or may not, depending on how I'm doing, it will adjust my nutrition based on how I'm progressing. So for example, this algorithm we wrote, which is many pages long, basically looks at, okay, you know, we have 4 different settings. We have like muscle gain, fat loss, maintenance, reverse dieting. We get your initial information, right? Your weight, your body composition, that sort of thing. And then We get some information about your dietary preferences. Like, are you more like a carb person, a fat person? Are you plant-based? Or do you want to do ketogenic? Do you that sort of thing? And then we generate your initial recommendations based on that and based on your goal.
Like calories per day?
Calories, protein,
to the
carbs,
weight
fats.
you want to end up?
Right. But the cool thing about ours is every week you check in, and then if you are not progressing appropriately, it will adjust. So it will sense, like if your goal is, for example, fat loss, and you're not losing weight at the appropriate rate for your goal, it will adjust your nutrition. Or let's say you're actually losing too fast. It will actually raise your calories. And it also has, like, for example, a dietary planner, which basically we wrote it so that, you have a weekly calorie budget. So if you want to have more calories on a certain day, like a lot of people, for me, I want to have more calories on the weekend because I'm more likely to go out, maybe have a few drinks, that sort of thing. So I can budget that. If I give myself more calories on those weekend days, it will then correspondingly lower the other days.
Because it's over the 7 days.
So that my weekly budget is the same.
And then with that, so if you eat, let's say, a sandwich from, I don't know, Subway or something, you enter that into the program and Subway's on there and all the stuff you eat.
Yep. So we use our database is from we use a third-party database called Fat Secret, which is the largest verified database that there is. The MyFitnessPal has more, their database is bigger, but there's a lot of unverified entries because users can add their own stuff.
You can add whatever you want to.
You can look on there.
Sunshine over here should probably be eating some fiber, right?
Fiber's good.
Yeah, don't eat just carnivore. And whiskey ain't fucking fiber. And it's fucking nicotine.
You can't stop, won't stop, man.
I'm saying that's not
I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for
No, don't die. Don't die.
I'm going to use his app, though. I'll tell you that.
We'll get you set up.
Yeah, I'll do it for sure.
No, so it's done really well. I mean, we've got multiple people who've lost like well over 100 pounds using our app.
Jesus.
George, we've got some really cool, some transformations.
No, you're good. You're great.
George, you're going to melt away.
I think the other thing, too, I do want to point this out for people. I think one of the barriers to people really getting engaged in weight loss or improving their health is like somebody who has a lot of weight to lose. They go, well, I could never do it, right? I could never get to
it's Mount
look
Everest.
like you, right?
Yeah.
The reality is, if you lose like 5-10% of your body weight, you see most of the health benefits in that initial weight loss.
Really?
Yep. So it's really amazing. Like, I'm going to really generalize. So my scientists out there, please don't get angry at me because I'm generalizing.
We have a lot of scientists watching.
A lot of scientists. Most of our fan base is scientists.
Make sure you watch your P's and Q's.
Yep.
We're all wearing lab coats talking about glycogen.
Yeah. Got a lot of.
But what basically happens with like things like type 2 diabetes and whatnot is once you have gotten your fat cells expanded to a certain level, they actually become insulin resistant as well. Okay, so it gets hard to put more nutrients into those fat cells. Okay, and what happens then is those nutrients now are backing up into your bloodstream, right? Which is why you have elevated blood glucose, you have elevated blood lipids, you have elevated, even amino acids get elevated. So when you start losing weight, when those fat cells start to shrink, now you can get this stuff out of your bloodstream. And if you're doing exercise, you're sensitizing your skeletal muscle to it. Now your tissues, for lack of a better term, can start soaking up these nutrients. And I mean, we saw, it wasn't my study, but when I got to University of Illinois, they were doing a year-long study in women, I think it was, who were overweight. I think they were overweight, so I don't want to butcher the study. But Dr. Layman said, we saw many of them almost completely resolve their blood markers in like 4 to 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Like just from that initial weight loss. So really, you don't have to lose a ton of weight to get those benefits. And, like this gets kind of into the health at every size movement. That has been co-opted by people who are trying to make obesity basically something that's healthy. But the core of the message, I believe, is actually a good message, which is even if you aren't lean, if you're obese, you can still behave, you can still adopt healthy habits regardless of weight loss. Mm-hmm. to improve your health, right? Now, the irony is if you adopt healthy habits, you will probably start losing weight, right? Unfortunately, that movement has been co-opted by people.
Lizzo.
Yeah, well, I think there's like this big culture war right now, and you have at one extreme, you have absolute personal responsibility, right? So everything is your responsibility. It's your fault. It's your choices, right?
Yep, and they're right.
And on the other end, you kind of have fatism, right? Nothing is your fault. You're just responding to trauma and all these sorts of things. And what I'll say is, I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Probably more over to your right.
I think that, but I think a quote I heard, and I think it's Will Smith, who I know isn't super popular right now.
We know Will Smith.
We like Will him.
Well, okay, well, I like this quote, which is, people always want to tie together responsibility and blame, right? So it's somebody's fault. It should be their responsibility to fix it. The reality is, it doesn't matter whose fault it was. It's going to be your responsibility to fix it.
That's right.
And so I think there's this like the appeal of some of these movements of, well, obesity is all genetics, and some people just can't lose weight. I mean, we know from scientific studies it's just not true. You put anybody into a deficit and they lose weight. Now, I'm not saying it's not harder for certain people because of how they were raised, because
Polynesian.
of appetite. Like if you look at the metabolism stuff, for the most part, when you look at averages and studies, obese people don't have slower metabolisms than people who are lean. In fact, if anything, it's a little bit the opposite.
But what about the gut profile? Like they're.
Let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
Let me finish this thought. Because my ADHD will be like, squirrel.
No,
Sorry.
So at the end of the day, those things.
What about Popeyes? Shut the fuck up. You're ruining the.
Armbar.
He's in the middle of a. Put your lab coat on.
Armbar. I wear it on the inside of my body.
All this stuff can be true about, you may be starting on the 10-yard line as opposed to somebody starting on the 50-yard line, but it doesn't change the fact that, one, you can improve from where you are, and two, nobody's coming to rescue you.
Yeah,
You gotta
take ownership.
And I totally empathize with people who have had rough childhoods, who use food as a coping mechanism. Like, I am not somebody who's like, all fat people are lazy.
Yeah.
Like I had somebody one time was like, well, I would never hire a fat person because it just means they're lazy. I'm like, how many like brilliant scientists and like successful entrepreneurs who are incredibly hard workers are also overweight? Like,
Zero.
we know that.
A lot. No, you're missing the point. Einstein didn't have abs. Either did Darwin.
Ben Franklin.
Franklin was
was chubby.
There are a lot of people. There are a lot of smart
the point being is, it's not necessarily a laziness thing.
So skinny.
But if you want to improve, you do have to make a choice. And I think David Goggins does a good job of talking about this. Like if you read his book, he talks about all the trauma he went through in his childhood.
You'll run through a fucking wall.
All you have to do is run 100 miles a day.
Yeah. But he's like, I looked in the mirror and I just decided, and I think it really kind of boils down to a decision and saying, so what I always say, like when we do our coaching, so I do have even though we have our app, we also offer one-on-one nutrition coaching through our company team, Layne. And one of the things that we train our coaches to do is to provide accountability, but with empathy, okay? Because you have to have both. Because if you're just a drill sergeant yelling at everybody,
it's gonna turn some people off.
They're not gonna tell you they're not if they're like, hey, I overate this weekend, you fat piece of shit, like this, like that. It's not gonna be helpful, some people respond okay to that, but most people don't, right? But if you're also just doing the empathy piece, which is, I understand, it's hard.
No one sees any changes.
Right. There's no impetus to change. So what we teach is empathy with accountability.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, if somebody had a screw up or something like that.
And what's a screw up? I had 12 dozen donuts.
Yeah. So I had a client this last week. It's I had a really stressful week at work. I ended up, binging on some junk food. And so I'm not browbeating this guy. I'm like, obviously this is detrimental to what you're trying to do, but let's think about why did this happen? Right. And he's like, well, it was late. I had a stressful day. And it's like, okay, so what can we do to possibly reduce this? Right?
I would judge his junk food. What'd you eat?
Well, but some people, like, they have kids in the house and that sort of thing. It's hard for them to, like, just, get their whole family on board with it. So I'm like, okay, maybe we can have, prepped meals ready to go. Because a lot of times it's just accessibility, right? Like, if you have something that's convenient that you would eat, it's a lot, it makes it so that you're not necessarily going to go to the junk food. Because junk food a lot of times is just convenient.
It's there. It's cheaper. Have you tried those meal plans? They're tough, man. Like, you'll do them, and they definitely work, and there's some great plans out there, and America's #1 meal kit. But it's like after like 6 weeks, y'all, dude.
Well, I think that's why I look at
it's just.
So when I say meal prep, I'm just like talking about having accessible stuff that you like that you can eat.
Oh, gotcha.
Not necessarily sticking to like a rigid meal plan.
Gotcha.
I look at meal plans, and we don't really do meal plans in my company because I look at that like training wheels, right? Like, it's great. It might be great to get somebody started, right? But eventually you got to learn how to swim on your own.
Yes, sir.
Or you got to learn how to cycle.
That's
you got to
it.
learn how to bike on your own.
That's
right?
it. Yeah.
And so whether that's intermittent fasting, low carb, tracking your calories, any of that stuff can work. Personally, for me, I like to track what I'm eating because I would rather do that form of restriction and still be able to like have a bowl of ice cream at night
And not beat yourself up.
Yeah, and I can like, okay, of my, and the other thing is I look at it like a budget, right? So for example, cars are a bad investment, right? Like,
Depends on which car, but carry on.
Right. But like in general, cars are a bad investment. Like, they depreciate in value, that sort of thing.
Depends which car.
Okay.
You're talking to a car guy here. Man.
Okay, well, all right.
For the most
like
part.
not an antique.
Yes.
Right. So
not certain
Not Ferraris and Lamborghinis.
Right. So we're talking about a normal car. People would buy.
Porsche.
So does that mean you should never buy a new car? Well, it depends.
Bugatti.
Right? Like, if you're making $50,000 a year, it may not make sense for you to go out and buy a new car if it means that you can't pay your mortgage and you can't put, you can't pay your utilities, and you can't take care of your responsibilities.
Yep.
Right.
Hookers and blows bad.
But if you make $1 million a year and you want to buy a new car and you can still pay your mortgage, put money away, pay your utilities, take care of your responsibilities, then even though it's not a great investment, it's important to treat yourself sometimes, so that you can so that you're not feeling like you're just grinding yourself into oblivion.
So you believe in cheat?
So I don't necessarily believe in cheats because I don't look at it as a cheat, right? I believe in budgeting appropriately. So if for me, I'm about 210 pounds right now. I exercise, 4 to 5. I resistance train 4 to 5 days a week for 2 or 3 hours. So I expend a lot of calories.
Damn, you're training that long? 2 or 3 hours?
Yeah. So
now you are?
Yeah, this morning I trained 3 hours. But I'm prepping.
Is that too long?
Well, I'm prepping for nationals.
Oh, gotcha.
So, and keep in
mind
mind with powerlifting, like I'm doing a really heavy lift and then I'm
Long
resting
breaks.
for 5 or 10 minutes because it's so psychologically stressful to like lift that kind of weight.
Yeah.
So, but I can eat about 3,300 to 3,500 calories a day and maintain my weight.
It's a lot.
So that's a big budget, right? So I can get all my protein, all my fiber, my fruits and vegetables, and then I've got some over left to play with. If I want to spend 300 calories of that on a bowl of ice cream, is it going to be a problem? Not really, because I'm still taking care of my other responsibilities. Yeah. And for me, it helps me being more consistent, knowing I can have those things. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do that.
It works
because
for you, though.
some people,
well,
they have trouble with moderation.
What supplements do you take? Creatine.
Creatine, I also have a supplement line called Outwork Nutrition.
Okay.
We have a pre-workout, we have a recovery product, we have a whey protein, and then we have a sleep supplement. So these are basically the supplements I take. And so if you pull up our pre-workout, I can go through some of the ingredients. But
Bryan, how have you been friends with him for 10 years and you don't use any of this? Or no, he has his own supplement?
I
go to the second photo.
I just call him at times, and I'm like, they're telling me seed oils are going to kill me. He's like, take a second, hold on.
So one of the different
Good price too.
So one of the different things about our pre-workout is you notice there's no creatine in it. Right. Now, creatine timing is not important, but a lot of people put creatine in pre-workouts because it's inexpensive, right? And it's another ingredient to include. The other thing to look for is we actually list the amounts of our ingredients on the side. If something says proprietary blend, I can almost promise you that means they're fairy dusting stuff.
I bet.
Because why would you for example, citrulline malate, the minimum effective dose is 6,000 milligrams. Okay, that is about 40% of our total cost. Is that citrulline malate?
Wow.
So if I did a proprietary blend, I could put 500 milligrams in, save a bunch of money, and it's still got citrulline malate in it, even though it's not going to do anything.
Interesting.
Right? So citrulline malate, for example, has been shown to improve fatigue resistance, time to exhaustion, those sorts of things. Beta alanine, similar. It has to do with like kind of internal acid base buffering. It increases muscle carnosine content.
Good amount of caffeine.
It's caffeine. So the 300 milligrams, that's kind of the
Cup
dose.
of coffee?
That's like 3 cups of coffee. Now, the reason we went with 300 is because that's kind of the minimum dose for actually seeing differences in strength. And you see improvements in cognition. Now, there are some people who are sensitive to caffeine, and for what I would say for them, take a half dose if you're sensitive. We also make a caffeine-free version as well.
Well, what happens if you're you take a lot, like I'll drink 6 shots of espresso and be good to go?
So for you, like I would do the caffeine-free version if you like to have espresso.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean? And then rhodiola rosea, we were talking about that earlier, is an adaptogen. It seems to have possibly cognitive benefits. Anecdotally, it smooths out kind of the caffeine response, so it just makes it like a smoother experience. And it's been shown to reduce fatigue and reduce the perception of fatigue. And then L-DOPA is the precursor to dopamine, and that's a small enough dose that it's not like you're like doing a line before you work out. You know what I mean? But the way I would describe L-DOPA is you just feel you feel good.
I dig it, man.
So if you go to our recovery part, now the reason we didn't put creatine in there is because one, the timing isn't important. Okay, so if you just take creatine enough throughout, like consistently each day, you'll saturate your muscle cells with phosphocreatine, and you'll get the benefits.
Don't you get enough creatine if you eat red meat?
No. So you'd need to consume about I believe it's about 7 pounds of red meat because cooking reduces the bioavailability of the creatine. So
I eat medium rare.
Glycogen.
Dude, he's 50.
So
56.
So creatine. So first off, one of the cool things about creatine is it also improves cognition. There's actually quite a bit of research out there now showing it improves cognition, increases lean mass, increases strength. Now, we didn't put it in our pre-workout because one, the timing isn't important, and two, it can be a gut irritant, and caffeine is also a gut irritant.
If you're
so this is why a lot of times you ever had a pre-workout and then you have to go on the shitter.
Shit my pants. Yeah,
right.
I enjoy that though.
I do like I get nervous before like big squat and deadlift workouts.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I'll go to the bathroom real quick. Yeah, me too.
And also I'm like, all right, like I like to empty the tank because the worst case scenario is you wind up on YouTube as the guy who shit their pants.
Fuck, that would be terrible.
So we got creatine. Betaine is kind of like a creatine. It's been shown to increase lean mass. It's been shown to increase power output. L-carnitine, L-tartrate. There's one study showing it increases androgen receptor density, but I'm not sure if I completely buy that study. But it does improve recovery and reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. Same thing for tart cherry. It's been shown to improve recovery.
Cherry.
Yeah, sweet tart and acid cherry.
And then ashwagandha is also something that I'm pretty bullish on. I do want to see more research on it because I feel like the mechanism that it works by hasn't been fully elucidated. But it seems like it increases lean mass, possibly improves strength, small increase in testosterone. Not sure if it's a meaningful increase.
You get a boner.
But what it really seems to do is improve stress. Oh. So it improves stress and possibly reduces cortisol as well. So then that's...
I dig it, man.
And then if you pull up our sleep supplement, I'll go through that as well. Whey protein is whey protein. It's just a high quality protein that tastes good. So melatonin, obviously most people are familiar with melatonin. Well, that thing keeps zooming in.
Yeah, I know.
So
I can't read.
We went with 2 milligrams because
you can just keep going.
Hey,
scientist. Layne gets so thorough. He gets so thorough. And I'm like,
supplements are no bullshit, Brian.
I'm the worst student. I'm like, all right, man, I'll take that stuff out the end.
When are we going to talk about glycogen?
So, melatonin The minimum effective dose seems to be around 500 milligrams. Or
Without feeling like groggy.
Or sorry. Half a milligram.
I'm glad you fixed it.
Yeah, like if you do like 5-10 milligrams of melatonin, anecdotally, like I do feel groggy the next day. Even 2, I kind of have to work up to. But the nice thing is you could take a half dose of this and it would still have like an effect. Then saffron extract has been shown to improve sleep quality as well. And I believe it reduces the time to go to sleep. And then L-theanine isn't really necessarily a sleep aid, but it kind of is good for relaxation.
It's an amino acid.
Yeah. But it's not one that you like.
Chemistry.
Yeah. So So this is kind of like a sleep/relaxation supplement.
I dig it. No bullshit with those supplements.
But yeah, but like the one thing about sleep that people don't realize, so this is the one hack that people don't want to put the like time into is proper sleep. And I've been guilty of that at times as well.
Well, remember with the bro science, it was like, sleep is time. And, P. Diddy's like, only sleep 3 hours. Yeah.
Sleep faster.
P. Diddy's like, only sleep 3 hours a night. You're like, Jesus Christ, how did you get away with it?
Now,
Mark Wahlberg's like, my schedule's this. You're like, come on.
So
waking up at 3:30.
The real issue with sleep is, there have been studies. One night of sleep deprivation, they showed people spontaneously increased their caloric intake by 500 calories a day.
Preach.
It reduced insulin sensitivity. Additionally, you have reductions in performance in the gym. And when they put people in caloric restriction, they had one group, I think it was 14 days. They had one group that was sleep deprived. I think they were like 5 hours or less. Another group was getting over 8. The group that got over 8 basically lost no lean mass. The group that was less than 5, almost half of their weight loss was lean mass.
But aren't there certain people that don't require the same amount of sleep?
So there probably is an individual threshold.
Because it's tough for me to get over 8. Like I've been waking up at like 4 or 5 every single morning for I don't know how long. I'll go to bed around 9:30. But if I have like a set late at night, and if I go to bed at midnight, I'm still up at 5.
Yeah. So
I feel okay.
Look
like shit.
And the thing is, like, if you're getting like a couple nights of broken sleep or something like that, it's not a big deal. It's more about like your overall, like what are you doing overall, right?
Yeah.
You
get older, by the way, you get more delicate. You need your sleep.
And
like I get my 7.5. I'm
you take a nap like a bitch.
I take a little nappy poo sometimes when I can. Sometimes I'll lie down for no more than 20 minutes. I shut it down.
Yeah.
There's no data I'm available on this, but I do think there is something to there's probably individual thresholds for sleep. And so like for me, I'm the same way. If I get like 7 or 7.5, I feel good. Like I have plenty of energy.
I'm a little tired when I wake up. Once I get going, I'm like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
If you go through your whole sleep cycle, you wake me up in the middle of the dream, I'm going to be dragging a little bit. I got to complete my sleep cycle. That's what I did. I'm already bored with my own.
Yeah.
But that's really...
I was staring at the wall. I'm sorry. Were you saying something? You want to cover your sleep cycle again? I'm sorry. I was like this. As you were explaining, I was like this. I don't know why you didn't see me. I was like this.
No, you were looking at me, but you were looking past me.
I was staring through your body.
I could feel your bored laser beam energy.
And then I was trying to contribute on it. And you feel good? You got enough flu?
I was like, I know that, like, Brent and I had this heart-to-heart where to get deep in. We were in awesome, deep conversation. And I kept adding shit onto it.
God.
Like, I made my point, but then I keep adding shit to it,
I told Brian, said, hey,
I see him.
I don't feel like you do that at all.
Yeah.
He's looking around going, no doubt, no doubt.
I was going, no doubt, no doubt.
I saw a meme. It was like, when you're 5 uh-huhs, 10, wow, that's crazy.
Bro, that's Brian.
And 7 wows deep, and they won't stop the conversation.
Brian goes, I'm giving you pearls here. And then finally I went, I'm all full on pearl. My bag is full.
Too many pearls.
I'm like this.
The pearls are falling on the ground.
Do we need current events for this one? No. Probably not.
That was good. I got to catch a flight.
Oh, you're going to Dallas because you quit fighting the kid.
I'm going to do Louder with Crowder kids because I quit fighter and
I'm in Tacoma Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Tacoma, Layne. I'm definitely downloading that.
Layne,
app
what a great
as soon as we leave here. Yeah,
what
you're
a
the
trove
best,
of information you are.
Great to finally meet you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you, man.
I love
that guy, right?
Yeah,
my
fuck
boy.
this guy. Tesla and naps and shit.
Talk to us when you deadlift over 300, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this is me. That's a good impression.
You're making fun of.
No, I'm making fun of you. No, you got to take creatine, you piece of shit.
Ow! Ow!
Oh, here we go.
Layne, get your shitty friend over here.
Get out of here. Guys,
give
go
me your
see Brennan in
supplements.
Tacoma, Washington.
That's this week. Yep.
Yep. I might be at Magoobies, might not. You never know. But I'm going to be at Helium,
The worst.
Portland.
The worst.
April 20th, 21, 22. I may have a scheduling conflict with them.
And don't have a picture for the helium from 2014, right?
Yeah,
Where you have hair.
I was super young
That's
back
false
then.
advertisement.
That is false advertising.
He does not look like that.
Not what I look like in person, but I am working with Layne Norton starting right now.
No,
I
no, we
will
don't.
be
Layne
jacked
doesn't
as
need
fuck.
that bad PR.
I will be jacked as fuck.
Bad PR.
I work with Layne.
We want to be
Brian,
very
can you
clear. You
stop
have not
doing
been
that?
using his app.
Just holding his supplements. Hey, guys, want to look like me?
Want to be more like me?
One dose, all it takes.
Layne, we love you, brother. We're
Thanks
out.
for having me,
That's
guys.
great, dude.